Hey, Culpeper Baptist Church, we have a unique opportunity today to kind of broaden our view of the world, and we have some friends here today who are intentionally off camera, and we're also practicing social distancing, so we're doing everything right today. But they're going to tell us a little bit about their work in other parts of the world, and they're going to tell us about a people group. So you're going to hear their voice off the screen. You're going to see some of what they're talking about on the screen behind me. So I'm going to let them kind of start and tell us the story of the work that they do.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for letting us be here with you today. We'd just like to share with you about an ancient people group who are still going today, and their name is the Beja people. And they live in the countries that you would recognize as Egypt, Sudan, and Eritrea. They're an ancient people group. They've been around for more than 2,000 years, living along the Red Sea hills and the coast of the Red Sea. They're just about 100% Muslim in their religious background. And in the past, they were mostly nomadic herders of camels, sheep, and goats, and live a lot like that today. So we'd like to tell you just a little bit more about them.
So the Beja are considered an unreached people group, which means that most Beja do not have any access to the gospel. There are a few churches around the margins of Beja territory, but not very many inside it. There are indigenous Christians in all three countries where the Beja live, but the environment, the political environment, is hostile to reaching out, doing evangelism and church planting. So the Christians who do live in Egypt, Sudan, and Eritrea, if they are going to be involved in trying to reach Beja, have to be very careful and creative in the ways that they access them. You can be praying for Egyptians especially, who have felt like God has called them to work among Beja and are looking for ways to creatively engage and get involved. You might think that an Egyptian working with someone in their own country would be doing home missions, as we would call it here in the U.S., but actually this is very much cross-cultural, more like our foreign missions. It involves getting involved in another language and another culture and having to relearn just about everything. What else can we say about that?
All right. So tell us what you find as effective ways to engage with this group.
So the Beja are a relational culture. They're a relational people group, which means that you spend a lot of time not socially distancing, but sitting close together. And the way that you socialize is you sit and drink coffee. And the best way to share your life and your faith and your experiences with someone is to sit down and drink coffee and just talk and share stories. In fact, in the main Beja language, and we'll talk about Beja language a little bit later, but in the main Beja language, the greeting that you offer when you come in is Sakena Hadida, which means, what's the news? And that's the opening for you to start sharing what's been going on in your life, because they're a desert people and they're traditionally nomadic. And in the past, that was how you found out what was going on in the world, is people would come in, and as soon as they come from wherever, miles and miles away, you bring them inside your tent and you start up the fire and you roast the coffee and you start making coffee, or you roast the beans and start making coffee.
What have you seen in terms of movement, if you will, towards the gospel of this people group?
So the Beja are perhaps the least reached people group in Africa. They've been described that way, and they are a very hard nut to crack. We did have some progress going back about how long ago was that? Almost 10 years ago. We had some good progress going in Sudan. There were Sudanese evangelists working among the people group, and they saw people coming to Christ. We probably had about 60 believers in 2012. But in 2011, so just before that, Sudan as a country split in half. The South gained its independence through a referendum that was almost unanimous and was somewhat humiliating for the Muslim North. And as a result, the North wanted to remove all Christian influence from its country. And so they sent all of those southern Sudanese who had been born, raised, lived in the North all their lives south. And as a result, all of our Sudanese evangelists were gone after that. And then there was a wave of persecution that pushed out most of the foreign Christians as well. And since then, we haven't really had contact with those Christians in Sudan. In Egypt, we have Egyptians that have been trying to reach Bijah, but they haven't seen any come to Christ yet.
How do people stay encouraged who are trying to reach out to the Bijah with, not a lot of what we would call success, which is not a great way to describe that?
So, to be honest, it's tough. The Egyptians who feel called to it, they struggle with discouragement. Not just the Egyptians, but everybody, but especially our Egyptian brothers and sisters. They do find opportunities to come together and pray together and worship together. The ones who are out in Bijah territory and in the middle of the work, they have the hardest lot to deal with because they're isolated from their fellowship. And the most encouraging things for them are when people come and spend time with them and can pray with them, and they can sing worship songs with them, and they can have their normal Christian life back in some ways.
What else can you tell us about the Bijah?
Well, Bijah they're a very interesting culture. One of the things about them is that they are very independent-minded. So they're
Like
unlike
Baptist.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going. They're surrounded by Arab culture, and in Arab culture, the way that decisions are made and the way that consensus is, the most important person, whoever the leader is, everyone tries to understand what that person is thinking and agree with them. So you don't really have this democratic, everyone trying to express their own opinion. Among Bijah, it's the other way around. Among Bijah, where you have a group of Bijah, if you ask an opinion question to the lot of them, at least the men, each one will give a slightly different answer. So it is sort of like Baptists, where you have two Baptists, you have three opinions.
Right.
It's kind of like with Bijah.
What are some things that we could learn from the work that's happening with the Bijah people? As you all know, church in our culture has been wildly disrupted, and I think we're all a little maybe sadder than we should be, but there's that struggle of what do we do? So what are some things we could learn from the work that's happening with the Bijah? I liked your having coffee and doing some of that relational piece, but what are some parallels we could understand in our day?
So one of the things that I think we could pick up from, one of our Egyptians who works with Bijah, when he first started trying to reach them, he had a really hard time because he felt like he needed to accomplish a list of tasks in order to be doing work. And he wasn't able to accomplish those with his Bijah friends. So he wanted to teach them English. He wanted to train them in skills. They weren't interested in any of that. They wanted to sit and talk. And so maybe we can step back from some of our tasks and recognize that just being, and we can do that through other means than actually being in someone's presence. We can do it on the phone.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for letting us know a little bit more about a people group that doesn't have or hasn't had as much access to the gospel as certainly we have. We're going to do a few of these segments so you can find out more about the work that we are able to support. So we encourage you to come back and watch the next one as we learn more about the world and maybe get the focus a little bit off the challenges that we see today. So we'll see you next time.